Part 71. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 702. A large number of priests gathered outside a village about 20 kilometers away from Dani city. Among these priests, there are trapped priests responsible for building the foundation of the temple, annihilation priests responsible for defense, and the most are the insect nest priests wearing dark green robes. The believers are transporting steel and glass. They didn't expect that the temple of the goddess of harvest is so trendy. It is built with steel and glass. Steel and glass are rarely used by alchemists. 8 fat and green insects were surrounded by several insect nest priests in the center. The priests kept feeding green leaves to the green manure insects. Those green leaves glowed green in the night. They should be the special green leaves brought by the insect nest church from the southern continent. Canute, the newly promoted 8th level cardinal annihilation priest, emphasized to other priests, "A wizard attacked my men on Bernicki Beach. I suspect that wizard is a furnace, or a furnace that contains the characteristics of the new constellation. Be careful of the furnace." Just a wizard Umit, the 7th level insect nest priest next to him, said, "As long as the temple of the goddess of harvest is built, the radiation range of faith can be advanced 20 kilometers forward, slowly advancing northward, and the northern continent will eventually become the kingdom of the Lord inch by inch." Hearing Umit's words, Canute glanced at him coldly. "Your cardinal priest Montara is still resurrecting in the mother nest, which is the masterpiece of the furnace. Montara is qualified to be resurrected in the mother nest of the goddess of harvest. Do you have this qualification?" The 7th level insect nest priest did not refute Canute. He felt that the cardinal priest did not need to be so cautious. Cardinal Montara was killed because he did not have the blessing of the temple. It is a time of war now, and the Lord of Nothingness allows the goddess of harvest to borrow his temple. This is near the temple. How dare other apostles come here to make trouble? Just as the two were watching the believers transporting materials, Canute suddenly turned around and waved his hand quickly. His magic was faster than his arm, and when his sight just turned to the back, the magic was completed. Suddenly, a bunch of hair pierced out from the ground. These hairs were so fast, and each hair was as thick as wolf hair, piercing the 8 green fat worms at a very fast speed. These green fat worms are not simple insects, they are the foundation of the insect nest temple, which contains the power of the evil god's insect nest. After sacrifice, these insects can grow into a swarm of insects that can accommodate the power of the evil god. In front of the 8 green fat worms, dozens of densely packed small whirlpools appeared. These small black whirlpools formed a spherical surface, and even the ground was full of black whirlpools. Whether it was the back wolf hair that had already pierced the ground or was under the ground, it rushed into the black vortex and disappeared. It was not until this time that the priests saw the attacker, the wizard who appeared at the moment of the attack. Rudolph stood 100 meters away from the green fat worm, put down his arm, and ended this failed sneak attack. He looked at Canute in surprise. After not seeing him for many days, Newt's ability has improved so much. No, that's not right. Newt's reaction ability is not like the strength of an ordinary level 8 cardinal priest. Rudolph met the Oblivion cardinal priest in Belfort Port, but he was not as strong as Canute. The sneak attack under absolute concealment should not be so easily stopped. It was the temple that strengthened Newt's strength, or gave Canute a warning. Within the faith radiation range of the temple, Canute could borrow some of the abilities of the Oblivion temple. The level 7 high priest did not think again until 3 seconds later. Cold sweat soaked his head and his whole body trembled. He finally realized what had just happened. If it weren't for Canute, the furnace would have killed the nest larvae with a sneak attack. These green manure worms are larvae that crawled out of the nest of the goddess of harvest and are part of the nest. If these nest larvae die here, then there is no need for him, a level 7 high priest, to live. The goddess of harvest will dissolve him with acid and use it as a nutrient solution for the larvae. Canute stared at the figure of the furnace, trying to discover the secret of the furnace's invisible assassination. After the Battle of Belfort, the Temple of Oblivion informed Canute of what happened to the evil god Navy and asked Canute to be careful of the furnace. The furnace can avoid the perception of the cardinal priest and launch a terrifying sneak attack. If it weren't for the temple's warning for him, Canute would not have been able to find the furnace with his own strength. Rudolph felt very sorry that the sneak attack did not succeed. He wanted to save an absolute hit and save it for Canute, but it seems that he can't save it. Canute didn't even blink. Furnace shifted his sight, left the nest larvae, and looked at him. The two of them were old acquaintances. They had fought many times in the naval battles and the Martini Islands. Both sides were promoted, one became a level 8 cardinal priest, and the other became a level 7 wizard. Canute saw Furnace smiled at him, and then suddenly disappeared from his sight. He had no idea how Furnace disappeared, and he had no way to judge the mechanism of Furnace's disappearance. According to several cardinal priests in the Navy, Furnace should have become the most mysterious Lacerda wizard in the North Sky, so he became so elusive. Even if he knew that Furnace was a Lacerda wizard, Canute could not come up with any solution. Chameleons hidden in the dark are more terrifying than giant beasts such as lions and tigers. A few minutes later, the level 7 high priest was getting more and more anxious and asked, "Respected Cardinal Canute, is the furnace gone?" "Based on my understanding of furnaces, no." The level 7 high priest turned his head to look at the surrounding farmland, the rolling woods in the distance, and the low huts in the village, thinking that the furnace could be hidden anywhere. "Don't look for him. I can't find him, and you can't find him either. No one can find the furnace except the moment when the furnace attacks." Canute thought for a while and said, "If the furnace is tricked to the vicinity of the temple, it may be possible to find the furnace with the help of the Lord's power. But the furnace is very cunning, and it is impossible for him to enter the dangerous place easily." After more than 10 minutes, the furnace did not appear, and the furnace did not appear for an hour. After 2 hours, the furnace still did not appear. This kind of waiting is very torturous. The furnace did not give up, and the priests could only wait. The believers behind him could not feel the priests' worries and fears. They still transported steel and glass with carriages. There was no train here, and the materials were transported in the most primitive way. There was a noise in the distance. The priests did not wait for the furnace, but waited for the Constitution Army. Looking at the Constitution Army assembled a few hundred meters away, Canute said, "You come to deal with the Constitution Army, I will guard the mother nest larvae, and we must not let the furnace succeed." Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 703. The Constitutional Army did not dare to enter the faith radiation range of the temple. They set up artillery positions in safe places. "Dear Cardinal Canute, aren't we going to destroy those artillery fields?" Faced with the question from level 7 High Priest Umit, Canute felt that these young people were all stupid in the southern continent. He said, "As long as we leave the faith radiation range of the temple, the furnace can easily kill us. Have you forgotten how your cardinal priest Montella died?" Umit understood the truth, but watching the Constitutional Army deploy artillery positions in the distance made the priests feel offended. The artillerymen of the Constitutional Army were very skilled in their movements. They quickly fixed and installed the gun mounts and adjusted the muzzles. Canute said, "Speed up the construction of the temple. As long as the temple is built, these constitutional troops will be at the door of the temple. Will they not be at our mercy?" After thinking about it again, Canute ordered again, "Quick! Bring the sacrifices here. Let the sacrifices surround them." The sacrifices were blown up by the Constitutional Army. If they died freshly and their souls have not yet dispersed, they can still die. Use it as nourishment for the temple of the harvest goddess. While the Constitutional Army was preparing artillery positions, the evil god cult was driving away the sacrifices. These sacrifices were in the villages at the rear, and were driven in groups to the vicinity of the temple. The priests in villages and towns further away also received the order. The priests drove the sacrifices and drove them to the temple that had not yet been built. Brigadier Brooke looked at everything in astonishment. He thought the evil god church was calling for more priests, but what he didn't expect was that they actually let unarmed sacrifices come over. The sacrifices were tied into a string with ropes and chains, and they rushed here one after another. Under the command of the priests, they circled around the periphery of the construction site. Half of the citizens of Dani City were sacrificed to the evil god and annihilated, and half of the farmers in the surrounding towns and villages were sacrificed to the evil god's insect nest. Sacrifice half of the population to build a temple, and leave half of the population as future believers. The plan of the evil cult is perfect. Some rumors spread quietly among the farmers. Half of the people in Dani City were missing, and the cemetery outside the city had not been expanded on a large scale. It was unknown where they had gone. The sacrifices were made regardless of young or old. Several members of the farmer's family were tied together. Some wore thin pajamas, and some cotton clothes were whipped into shreds. Their feet were tied with iron chains, and there were half-dried blood on their feet. The iron rings kept rubbing against the wounds, and these wounds would never heal. The priests don't even need to prepare food for them. The sacrifices will be completed in the next few days anyway, and the farmers have been hungry for more than a day. As the number of sacrifices increased, more and more people began to cry, especially women and children, and they cried continuously. The priests did not stop him and enjoyed the fear of the sacrifice. In the artillery position, the soldiers looked at each other. They could not accurately control the impact point of the artillery shells. If they fired at this time, the artillery shells would inevitably fall into the sacrifice. Many soldiers were from Dani City. They anxiously reported to their superiors that they saw people they knew among the sacrifices. The soldiers pointed at the officers and identified acquaintances, hoping that the officers could find a way to help them rescue their relatives or friends. These soldiers from Dani were lucky not to witness the deaths of citizens. They were also unlucky enough to be about to witness the sacrifices of farmers. Among the officers and soldiers in Dani City, the one with the highest military rank was hit, who became the battalion commander. "Brigadier, please let me lead the charge. Let me save those farmers in Dani City." Brooke ignored the pleas of these officers and gave the order after a slight struggle. "Temporarily gather the officers and soldiers of Dani City and tell them that the evil god cult has destroyed their hometown. Let the witch hunters explain to them that these people are about to become sacrifices and will die as sacrifices of the evil god cult. Their fate is only it may be death, there will be no second ending. It's cruel to say this, but there is no difference between being killed by us and being sacrificed." Upon hearing this, the officers hurriedly carried out the brigade commander's order. Battalion Commander Hit wanted to say something else, but he was stopped by his superior, a regiment commander, and dragged away. Hayter saw in despair that the officers began to adjust their deployment, gathering the soldiers from Dani City together and preventing them from operating the artillery. Duke, the director of the trial hall, came to these soldiers. "Children of Dani City. I am Duke, the director of the trial department of the Eagle Beak province. Please believe me, I have been dealing with the evil god cult for half my life, and I will tell you the cruel truth. The Insects Hive Church in the evil god cult is about to build a temple in front of you. Building a temple is not a simple civil engineering project, nor is it a simple construction project. They built the temple to give the evil god a node to project its power. The evil god's divine power is very huge. Only the huge power of faith brought by sacrifice can help the evil god penetrate the space and bring down the divine power. The basis of sacrifice is the vitality of a large number of sacrifices. A temple has been built in the urban area of Dani City, and at least half of the citizens of Dani City have been sacrificed to the evil god. An insect nest temple is being built in front of you. Those who are dragged here by chains are sacrifices to the evil god's insect nest. What we have to do is to prevent the establishment of the insect hive temple, thereby preventing the evil god insect hive from projecting his power directly here. Only by blocking the sacrificial ceremony can more people be saved. If a farmer unfortunately dies in gunfire, there is nothing that can be done about it. The farmers are our friends who grow food for us, and we certainly don't want to hurt them. But we really have no choice. This is a war with the evil god, and it was the evil god who captured the farmer's family first. Watch with your eyes wide open, children of Dani City. I hope you can remember what happened today. If we succeed, please remember that the evil god is not invincible. If we fail. Duke looked at the Dani City soldiers with red eyes. If we fail. If the temple is successfully built, where we stand is the square of the temple. Whether it's me, Brigadier General Brooke, or other officers, let us be buried with the farmers of Dani City together. The soldiers from Dani City finally calmed down and understood what they were doing. The insect nest temple was built, and this was the entrance to the temple. The priests could easily use the power of the temple to eliminate them all. The brigade commander, the director, and other senior officials were all risking their lives, and no one was spared. Director Duke had other things to do. After temporarily appeasing the soldiers, he went to do his thing. Battalion Commander Hayter stood in front of all the soldiers. Hundreds of people looked silently in the direction of Dani City. At this moment, they were homeless poor people. The first cannon sounded, and the shells rushed out with a whistle, hitting the temple construction site surrounded by sacrifices and priests. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 704. Within the faith radiation range of the temple, the cult of evil god is invincible. The annihilation priest responsible for defense creates black hole whirlpools in the air. These whirlpools do not need to predict the trajectory of the cannonballs. They only need to pave the sky to ensure that the temple construction site will not be attacked. The priests used their huge power of faith to ensure that nothing would go wrong with their quantity and density. No cannonball could penetrate the layers of defense woven by the black hole vortex. 2 layers of defense nets appeared above the construction site. The defense net was composed of small black hole vortices. Occasionally, shells that passed through the first layer of defense net would be captured by the black hole vortex of the second layer of defense net. All priests and believers who pray to the Temple of Annihilation will provide the power of faith to the temple. Cardinal Priest Canute has opened the permission to borrow the power of faith in the temple. Priests near Canute can use the power of faith in the temple to perform divine spells, which resulted in almost unlimited magical powers, and the priests did not need to save at all. The firepower of a constitutional army artillery brigade would not be able to break through the defense of these priests in a short time. The priests were protecting the temple that was under construction. As for the cannonballs that fell among the sacrifices, the priests completely ignored them. They just let the cannonballs kill more sacrifices and blast the sacrifices into pieces as much as possible. After a while, they became the mother nest. When the larvae provide nutrients, it is easier to dissolve and produce nutrient solution. The soldiers knew that this was a necessary sacrifice, but they still couldn't bear it. Brigadier Brooke gritted his teeth and persisted, waiting for the Forge and the Hall of Justice to come up with more targeted countermeasures. Rudolph was in a state of absolute concealment and walked forward carefully. His footsteps will not make any sound, will not leave any footprints, and even if he passes through sacrifices or priests, these people will not feel anything. He kept staring in the direction of Dani City, carefully watching for the temple's reaction. Rudolph wanted to know if he would be discovered by the temple if he entered the temple's faith radiation range if there was a temple. The result now is very good, the temple cannot see through the absolute concealment. Rudolph came to Canute, took out a revolver, and pressed the barrel between Newt's eyebrows. Even so, Rudolph didn't see anything abnormal on Newt's face. Canute still stared at a few green fat insects. This fully proved that as long as Rudolph didn't do anything, the temple could not help Canute discover the absolute concealment. An idea arose in Rudolph's mind. He wanted to try the temple. He didn't know if he could get close to the temple. Just when he was thinking this, his heartbeat suddenly became faster and his eyebrows ached. Canute suddenly turned his head and looked around, looking for something. He knew the furnace was nearby, but could not find it. At a certain moment just now, a warning came from the direction of the temple. The power of faith in the temple was in chaos, and it seemed that the temple was under threat. Rudolph withdrew his gaze towards the temple. He had just had the idea of sneaking into the temple, and the temple reacted instantly. His thought was like looking directly at the evil god. The evil god would be able to detect it immediately and was very sensitive. It is extremely dangerous to look directly at the evil god. The evil god is too high level and knows everything. Rudolph put down his gun. Within the faith radiation range of the temple, Rudolph could not kill Cardinal Priest Canute. This shot would at most cause Canute to be seriously injured. He looked down at the green fat worms, the brood larvae mentioned by the priests. The mother nest is the nest of the evil god's insect nest, which contains a swarm of insects that directly belong to the evil god. The larvae hatched in the mother's nest carry part of the power of the evil god's insect nest. 8 mother nest larvae gathered together, and among the 8 larvae, a level 7 alchemy cannonball suddenly appeared. This alchemical cannonball is half a man tall and is a shell for the Navy's main gun. The moment it appeared, the shell had been fired. Rudolph's figure appeared at the moment when he put down the cannonball. Newt's black hole magic instantly swallowed Rudolph and the level 7 alchemy cannonball together. He kept staring at the brood larvae, knowing that the furnace would never retreat easily. However, what Canute didn't know was that several grenades rolled down under Rudolph's feet. He and the cannonballs were very tall, and the grenades were very small. The grenades exploded on the ground, and the high priests were all frightened. The brood larvae were hit by several grenades, and they actually screamed in pain. There was always a witch hunter standing next to Duke. The witch hunter carefully protected the kerosene lamp in his hand. The kerosene lamp suddenly exploded, and Rudolph's figure emerged from the fire. Duke hurriedly asked, "Mr. Furnace, was it successful?" Rudolph's expression was not very good. Canute had become too strong. With the blessing of the temple, Newt's magic was fast and ruthless. Rudolph had no choice but to die to escape. He didn't even have time to enter the Absolute again. Hidden. I'll go take a look and see what's going on. Duke watched the figure of the furnace disappear again. He felt that the furnace was very hard to do this for 11 Elba. He wanted to write the sincerity of the furnace into the report. Going in and out of the dangerous radiation range of faith, what kind of sacrificial spirit is this, not for oneself but for others? Beside the brood larvae, the priests remained silent. Level 7 insect nest priest Umit's body was shaking like chaff, and the brood larvae were dead. The larvae were blown to pieces, and the light green juice inside the worms splashed all over the ground. The power of faith belonging to the evil god's insect nest was dissipating. Idiot! There are still 2 brood larvae that are not dead. What are you waiting for? Canute slapped Umit awake, and Umit quickly leaned over to rescue the last brood larvae. Level 7 priests are also big shots in the church. It is unheard of for them to be slapped by cardinal priests, but Umit can't care so much now. Rudolph was originally going to finish off the last larva, but after hearing what Canute said next, he gave up the action. Canute said, "No, it's useless. We still need to wait for the level 8 cardinal priests to come to ensure the establishment of the temple. The action is cancelled, retreat to Dani City, and wait for the level 8 cardinal priests of the Harvest Church to come. I don't know if Montara's resurrection went smoothly. You should immediately confirm with the Harvest Church through the Void Temple whether Montara will come again or send other cardinal priests. There is no time difference in the transmission of information between churches, and the church can make a decision tonight. Newt's order was faithfully executed, and all priests began to evacuate, and even the sacrifices were driven back to the village by the priests. Give these sacrifices food. Don't let too many of them starve to death before the Harvest Cardinal arrives, otherwise there won't be enough sacrifices. The soldiers on the Constitutional Army's position cheered, but Rudolph looked at Canute and his party leaving with a grim expression. If there is a hive cardinal, if the cardinal brings new hive larvae, then he won't be able to get them easily. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 705. Cardinal Priest Canute personally covered the rear and asked the priests to evacuate. Canute looked around carefully, guarding against the sudden appearance of the furnace. The high priest Umit sat nervously on the carriage, and next to him was the last surviving mother nest larva. The closer they got to the temple, the safer they felt. The priests' faces gradually calmed down, no longer afraid, no longer daunted. Behind the priest team were the sacrifices, and the sacrifices were driven by low-level priests to the direction of Dani City. The low-level priests were scared to death, and they used rough methods when urging the sacrifices. Some of the chains still had the bodies of the dead sacrifices hanging on them, and they didn't care to untie them. Others dragged the bodies forward under the urging of the whip. The person next to the body vomited while walking, because the body dragged on the ground had rubbed his stomach and his intestines were all over the ground. Rudolph had no intention of entangled with the priests, so he didn't chase them. The larvae of the mother nest are worth his effort, but killing the insects is useless. The Church of the Insect Nest can ask the new cardinal priest to bring other larvae of the mother nest. The soldiers in Dani City cried bitterly when they saw their fellow villagers being tied with iron chains and left. The soldiers who lived in the city knew that their families must have lived a worse life than this, and it was not certain whether they were still alive. The soldiers who lived in the suburbs watched their neighbors being dragged away, and they resented their own incompetence. Some families were happy and some were sad. The soldiers in Maha City raised their guns excitedly when they saw the evil god cult retreat. Rudolph appeared beside Brigade Commander Brooke, and the two looked at the soldiers who were in a carnival together. Retreat, there is no point in guarding here. Brooke turned his head in astonishment, wondering what new information the furnace had learned. Before the arrival of the level 8 cardinal priest of the hive, the evil god cult will not build another temple. The hive church is deep in the southern continent, and it will take about. Rudolph estimated the time. About 10 days by land, about 15 days by sea, a total of 25 days. I can't guarantee that I can deal with the level 8 cardinal high priests around the temple. Your parliament must come up with a response plan as soon as possible, otherwise the Eagle's Beak Peninsula will be eroded by the evil god cult. When the Eagle's Beak Peninsula becomes the parish of the evil god, when the Eagle's Beak Peninsula gathers enough faith power, and when the evil god's body descends here, everything will be too late, and no one can save you, Zirba. Brooke retracted his gaze from the soldiers, and after a long silence, he said to the staff officer, according to Mr. Furness's instructions, arrange the soldiers' retreat as soon as possible and withdraw to Maha City. Rudolph said, there is one more thing, arrange some manpower, and be careful that the priests capture the sacrifice. Add this one too. The staff officer felt that the wizard Furness was more like a brigade commander. Duke, who was standing by, also heard what the Furness said, and he remained silent. With 2 level 8 cardinal priests and the temple, there was no good solution except for a large number of level 8 giant air blast bombs. What Zirba lacks now is giant air blast bombs. If Elba does not split, then the alchemist will have sufficient resources to defeat the wolf tide and the evil god cult at the same time. Rudolph saw that the atmosphere was a bit solemn, and said, "I am very glad that the cardinal priests of the hive were killed outside Belfortport. The farmland in the suburbs belongs to the hive church. We now have more than 20 days to respond. This is good news, isn't it?" Duke pulled the corner of his mouth, admitting that this was good news. He said, "Mr. Furness, I will definitely get you the level 7 druid relics you mentioned. Please give me some time. We also have some level 7 priest relics, which we will also give to you. Completing one more secret formula and accommodating one more North Sky feature will help the situation, but it cannot fundamentally change the disadvantages of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. You still have to come up with a countermeasure in the Senate, or hope that Emperor Megwen will take the lead in completing the sacred exorcism agreement." Rudolph asked him. "Director Duke, how long does it take for the Royal Midnight Knights of the Megwen Empire to arrive here at the fastest?" Duke replied, "I don't know, there are too many variables. Fighting against the evil god is very dangerous, and Emperor Megwen will not rashly do charity. At least all the forces on the continent need to stand behind him to ensure his safety before he will leave his empire. And the continent, all the forces have communicated and negotiated." "Still communicating? Still negotiating? By then, I don't know if West Elba will be destroyed. Your Garan region must have been occupied by the evil god cult. As for the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, wouldn't it have been gone long ago?" Rudolph felt desperate for the people of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. "Duke, why don't you flee? The entire Eagle's Beak Peninsula flees to the north. At least people who flee will not die in the sacrifice of the temple. The escape of the entire Eagle's Beak province is not a simple sentence. I will submit a bill to the provincial parliament as soon as possible to see what the provincial parliament will choose." Brooke added, "At this time, I think we must establish a line of defense in Maha City to buy time for rear negotiations and migration." Build it." Brooke established a line of defense outside Maha City, and Rudolph returned to Malfoy City with Duke. On the platform of the train station, Rudolph looked at a luxury train opposite. The reason why it can be seen as a luxury train is that the windows of this train are not rows of seats, but suites. The suite was luxuriously decorated, even with wall coverings and wall lamps, as well as a sofa and bedroom. A carriage was divided into 3 such suites for 3 wealthy families to ride in. An attendant noticed Rudolph's gaze, thinking that Rudolph was some jealous poor man, and quickly pulled the curtain to block Rudolph's view. Rudolph pointed at the luxury train with his chin, and asked Duke on the side, "Director Duke, aren't the steam trains and rails controlled because of the war? Isn't this luxury train a little out of place?" "Mr. Furness, the rules of alchemists are full of privileges. Alchemists work hard to make money and occupy resources, isn't it to make themselves part of the privileges? This is a selfish part of human nature, and we cannot fight against this selfishness. This luxury series, this train is the train used by congressmen and big businessmen to send off their families. I hope you will treat it as if it does not exist for the sake of the Congress. The Parliament has not yet organized ordinary people to escape from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. It still needs a bill, the permission of the higher level Parliament, and the support of the Regional Council. However, the families of these congressmen and big businessmen are not affected by these bills. Are you sure we must hide this information, otherwise the soldiers on the front line will surrender to the evil god cult?" Duke also heard the sarcasm of the furnace. He said, it will be hidden very well. Both sides of the railway track are prohibited from ordinary people due to military control. No one will know the existence of these luxury trains. The control is good, it's really effective. Privilege is everywhere, but many people don't even have the qualifications to know it. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 706. In the Provincial Council meeting hall, all the members of the Eagle's Beak province were present. Today, there will be a meeting concerning the fate of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. As a special invited attendee, Rudolf was arranged in the seat pool of the Constitution Army representatives. This arrangement is very reasonable. Rudolf represents the strongest force of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, which is stronger than the Constitution Army and has a greater role than the Constitution Army. On the rostrum, Hart, the Speaker of the Provincial Council, was describing the difficulties and coping plans of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. Rudolf didn't have much time to listen to the speaker's impassioned speech. The Eagle's Beak province could not do much. The power he saw in front of him was all the Eagle's Beak Peninsula had. The Constitution Army had a division of the army and several ships in the navy, which was not worth mentioning in front of the 7 evil god cults in the southern continent. What can change the fate of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula is the capital Senate, the Elba royal family, and even the distant Megwen Empire. Speaker Hart said that the supplies on the peninsula were enough to last for 6 months in a war situation. Since the restoration of the Civil War, the Eagle's Beak province has been actively preparing for war and has never relaxed. Now that the Eagle's Beak Peninsula has encountered the evil god cult, the province no longer needs to provide supplies to the front line, and the supplies are sufficient for the time being. Rudolf was in a daze as the speaker's speech sounded in the background. Division Commander Rubio turned his head from time to time to observe the furnace, hoping that the furnace would show something. He hoped that the furnace could come up with a more effective solution. 10 minutes later, Rudolf suddenly turned around and asked Rubio, "Division Commander, have you sent people to the Holy Grail city of East Elba? What is the attitude of the royal family now? With the Wolf Tide and the evil god cult, West Elba was nominally the territory of the royal family before. Has the royal family loosened their mouths and has they any intention of ceasefire with you?" Rubio shook his head. "From the level of information I can access, such a good thing has not happened. Not only does East Elba have no intention of ceasefire, they are also constantly investing troops on the eastern border. In the past, only the Duke of Unicorn had the Horned Beast Knights were fighting us, and later half of the Royal Holy Grail Knights joined, and now there is another Ram Knights, which is affiliated with the Ram Duke Arsino. If it is confirmed that the evil god cult has no intention of attacking East Elba, I think the royal family will also send the remaining Royal Knights and Duke Wilf's Blue Lion Knights to the battlefield. The Elba Civil War has been going on for 3 years. It is meaningless to argue who is just and who is unjust now. Both sides cannot stop. Hatred will push both sides to continue fighting until one side is destroyed. Even the nobles of East Elba will gloat over the misfortune. The traitor alchemist is targeted by all forces. This is what the alchemist deserves." Rudolf thought for a while and said, "The Megwen Empire is too far away from here, and there is also a Carolingian kingdom in the middle that is also in a civil war. You should find a way to communicate with East Elba and ask East Elba to suspend the civil war so that the Constitution Army can free up its hands to deal with the evil god cult. This is very difficult. The attitude of the royal family is very firm. They claim that as long as we dissolve the parliaments at all levels, declare allegiance to the royal family, and escort the speakers at all levels to the Holy Grail city and execute them for treason, the royal family will immediately stop the civil war. This is not an attitude for peace talks. How can you agree to such harsh conditions?" Rudolf was helpless. There was no possibility of negotiation between the two sides. Master Rubio said, "At the beginning of the civil war, Carloman XVI might just want to restore the throne, but now, the civil war has undergone some fundamental changes. After the prophecy of destroying power appeared, the nobles became more and more unreasonable. At this time, Speaker Hart talked about a key thing. He said that the farmland on the west bank of the Garonne River was destroyed by the wolf tide. The Garonne region did not have the ability to accept refugees from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula in a short time. The meaning of the regional council was to postpone the refugee migration plan of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula as much as possible, at least in batches. If too many people leave the Eagle's Beak Peninsula in a short period of time, it will cause serious famine in other parts of the Garonne region. After the first temple was built, Everyone understood that the Eagle's Beak Peninsula would be abandoned sooner or later. The regional council believed that the refugees from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula should enter the rear in batches and delay as long as possible. The Garan region had to deal with the wolf tide and organize production in the rear, which was really too much. Speaker Hart said, "The civilians of Eagle's Beak province will definitely move away and cannot be left to the evil god cult. However, the news of the migration must be released slowly, and the migration work must be carried out in steps to buy time for the acceptance work of the region. Alchemists are good at controlling public opinion. They will use various means to accurately control the news. Until the migration, many ordinary people don't even know the seriousness of the matter, and don't know that the evil god cult is irresistible. Knowing that the provincial parliament will not organize the refugees to escape as soon as possible, coupled with the luxury train in the South Railway station that he saw last night, Rudolph felt very depressed. He wanted to ask Division Commander Rubio next to him if he knew that the luxury train had been transporting the families of big figures away, but then he thought it was unnecessary to ask. Maybe those families included the families of the senior members of the Constitutional Army. Rudolph remembered a story he saw in his previous life. Before the Japanese bombing, the evacuated plane was loaded with the second lady's 17 dogs and a special toilet, but it could not accommodate several scholar couples, and of course it could not accommodate ordinary citizens. In Duke's words, privilege is part of this society. The members of this chamber are willing to stay here to fight against the evil god cult. They must feel that they are courageous. After the speaker's mobilization, the deputy speaker explained the bill that needs to be voted on today, the Eagle's Beak War Act. The bill did not state it explicitly, but the words between the lines showed that this was the last war for the alchemists of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. The bill included wartime military production regulations, war food regulations, conscription regulations, pension regulations, etc. As for the civilians' escape, which Rudolph valued most, there was no mention in the bill. Rudolph knew the reason. The escape and migration of civilians would be carried out in secret. Once this matter was made public, it would cause panic among civilians, which was obviously not conducive to the big picture. The members of parliament passed the bill unanimously. From today, the Eagle's Beak Peninsula officially entered a state of war and officially entered the countdown to destruction. Just as the meeting was about to end, Speaker Hart announced that the city of Belfour would award Mr. Rudolph the title of Outstanding Citizen to reward Mr. Rudolph for his contribution to turning the tide in the port naval battle. Speaker Hart looked at the furnace with expectation, hoping that the furnace would come up to receive the award. If the furnace did not come up, he would have to announce that the outstanding citizen Mr. Rudolph was unwilling to show his face and was willing to be an unknown hero. To Speaker Hart's surprise, Furnace stood up and walked up. After receiving the trophy of Outstanding Citizen, Rudolph smiled and shook hands with Speaker Hart. The last city that awarded me the title of Outstanding Citizen was my hometown, Fabreau City. I really miss it, but it's a pity that they later deprived me of the title of Outstanding Citizen. Please rest assured, Mr. Furnace, we will never deprive you of your title. I believe this. I don't know how long Belfour City can exist. I'm afraid you won't have the chance to deprive me of the title of Outstanding Citizen. Before depriving me of the title of Outstanding Citizen, you must hold on, don't be destroyed by the evil god cult. Speaker Hart smiled awkwardly, his smile was a little stiff. The members below didn't know what was wrong with the speaker. Was he afraid of Furnace? Furnace has been quite honest and enthusiastic recently, running around everywhere, and is not as scary as the legend says. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 707. When the meeting ended, Speaker Hart and Director Duke quickly caught up with Rudolph. Speaker Hart said, "Mr. Furnace, I heard that you need a level 7 druid relic. Yes, I only need one druid relic for my third Northern Heaven secret style. Director Duke calculated in his mind that 3 Baitian secret styles require 9 relics, and the furnace has already obtained 8 different level 7 apostle relics. If someone else said this, he would definitely sneer at it. If so many level 7 apostles die in a short period of time, the entire northern continent will be shaken. This wizard will definitely die. It is impossible for various forces to allow the loss of so many level 7 apostles. Speaker Hart and Commander Rubio are both level 6 alchemists. Level 7 alchemists have a very distinguished status in West Elba. If the furnace said that he had obtained 8 level 7 relics, everything would become much more reasonable. After all, the melting pot. Speaker Hart said, "You judge that the evil god church will make a comeback in more than 20 days. I can assure you that we will definitely be able to send you a level 7 druid relic within a week. You'd better hurry up," Rudolph emphasized. "After I get the relics, I have to go to the secret location to complete the secret technique. This trip will take a lot of time. If you want me to catch up with the battle with the evil cult, a day earlier is a day." Rudolph also had to make demands, otherwise these alchemists would really think that he was doing good deeds. It's good to have the support of the alchemists. They don't have to hunt for the god's chosen relics. They have saved a lot of them themselves. There must be level 7 druid relics in the Garan region, otherwise Hart would not make a promise here. Rudolph was the main force against the evil temple, a main force more useful than the constitutional army. After leaving the city hall, Rudolph came to the hotel chartered by the Volcano Trading Company. There isn't much business in Belfour right now, and many hotels are empty. It doesn't cost much to book an entire hotel. After Rudolph entered the hotel, he first found Mackenzie and asked Mackenzie to gather everyone together and go to the hotel's conference room. More than 50 Volcano Trading Company employees poured into the conference room reserved for large companies. Rudolph did not sit on the rostrum, but sat on the table in the first row, looking at the members of the trading company who were seated one by one. Pilot, Salmon, Eagle, Zachary, etc., these people have been with Rudolph for 2 years, and Rudolph is very affectionate towards them. Pilot is a rebellious druid. No druid tribe took him in, and he has been wandering on the sea. Salmon is the chief engineer on the ship. He was promoted to a level 5 alchemist with Rudolph and has profound knowledge in alchemical machinery. Eagle is Mykon's second in command. In the past, being the captain of a ship was more than enough. Zachary has always been Rudolph's intelligence director. This level 4 Silver Snake has never been promoted and is still lower than Neela's level. Unfortunately, Rudolph can't help him with his promotion. Everyone was very confused when they saw the solemn look on Captain Furnace's face, not knowing what big thing had happened. After Rudolph saw everyone seated, he said to the people in the trading company, "I have some unfortunate news for you. The evil god cult has established its first temple in the northern continent, and will build a second temple in a month. After that, they will build temples one after another at a very fast speed. This process can only be delayed, not stopped. The era of pirates has officially ended, and there will be no more pirates on the Sarago Sea. The era of smugglers has passed, and there will be no more smugglers on the Sarago Sea from now on. I tried fighting against the temple, but I have to admit, it was pretty stupid. What I want to fight against is not the priests, but the evil gods. Fighting against the temple is fighting against the evil gods. In this matter, I am only a level 7 wizard and can't do anything. So, my friends, I have to announce that the original Forge and Green Skull Pirates, now the Volcano Trading Company, are disbanded." Cooper was not sensitive to these major changes, and he was surprised to hear Rudolph's decision. "But then I thought about it, Rudolph was the one who directly fought against the evil god priest, and Rudolph knew the strength of the evil god cult best." Yvonne looked at Rudolph with distressed eyes. Rudolph must have felt very uncomfortable when he announced this decision. One of the original great pirates, poor Sailor Drake, asked loudly, "Forge, can't even you fight against the cult of evil? What you said is simply insulting the evil god. What qualifications do I have to compare with the evil god?" Rudolph shook his head. "All I can do is to delay the expansion of the evil cult, and then wait for the real big figures on the continent, those knight emperors, kings, prime ministers to make decisions, so that the bad situation can be changed. In this catastrophe, everyone the power is insignificant, and this is not something I can solve." He continued, "I will sell the volcano, giant, Pisces I and Pisces II, and sell these ships to the constitutional army. These ships will have no chance to go to sea. As long as the evil cult makes a sacrifice, there is no safe zone in the sea between the two temples, and they are all within the attack range of the evil god cult. The evil god will appear directly above the volcano with his body covered with carrion, which is too terrifying." Cooper suddenly remembered something. "Rudolph, didn't Fabro City also build a temple? Why was that temple so easily destroyed by Fabro City?" "Because the establishment of that temple was an accident. That temple only had the power of faith from the sacrifices and did not have the power of the evil god. For example, the nest temple to be built, the nest church brought the mother nest larvae, which is equivalent to a part of the evil god's nest. The temple in Fabro City is too far away from the southern continent, and the power deployed by the evil god is limited, unlike the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, which is very close to the evil god. Cooper has never faced the temple directly, and he can't feel the pressure of facing the temple." After everyone slowly digested the news, Rudolph continued, "Just taking this opportunity, I want to talk about the transformation of the Volcano Trading Company." Everyone pricked up their ears, wondering what Captain Furnace had planned for the future. Rudolph said, "I am not a pirate in the traditional sense, nor a smuggler in the traditional sense. You have been with me for several years, and I have always prohibited you from robbing merchant ships and buying and selling people like other smugglers. As a furnace, I have a bad record, but I also have a bottom line. I, Yvonne, and Cooper, the three of us originally lived in a small town in Fabro City. If there were no Wolftide, we would have lived an ordinary life, and perhaps we would not even have the opportunity to become apostles. I still remember that if I wanted to become an alchemist, I needed 500 gold shields. I might not be able to save enough money even if I worked as a patrolman for 200 years. I thought that kind of life was also good. There were some goals, not too big or small. Every silver shield I earned would make me happy for several days. However, that kind of life was destroyed by the Wolftide and the sacrifice of the evil god cult, and even our hometown, Lehman Town, was destroyed. I have been away from Lehman Town for a long time, and I am more and more sure of one thing." Rudolph's expression was extremely serious, and the others listened more and more seriously. "The thing is that there are too many apostles in this world, and there are too many evil apostles like the evil god priests or werewolves in this world." Rudolph's eyes became cold. "Apostles who have superpowers are like giant beasts that devour resources. The luxury they enjoy is wealth that farmers have never seen in their lives. Level 1 and 2 apostles are better. Starting from level 3 apostles, the resources required for each apostle to advance are ridiculously huge. Even at the level of the evil god, the resources required are astronomical. What just happened in Danny City was that half of the population of Danny City was sacrificed just to build a temple for the evil god Annihilation. In order to maintain the operation of the Annihilation Temple, the other half of the population of Danny City was brainwashed into believers. The evil god's nest wanted to build a temple in the suburbs of Danny City. All the farmers in the suburbs were imprisoned together, waiting for half of them to be sacrificed to build the temple, and the other half were brainwashed into believers to maintain the operation of the insect nest temple. There are more than a dozen small towns around Danny City, like my hometown, Lehman Town. In those small towns, There are countless ordinary people like me who are happy for a long time after earning one silver shield, countless ordinary people like me who think the world is only as big as a small town, and countless ordinary people like me who have never heard of the name of a distant city. Those small towns have become broken soap bubbles because of the sacrifice of the evil god. They either died in the sacrifice or lost their souls and became believers who pray 3 times a day. The reason for all this is that the apostles need too many resources, so many that an ordinary person needs to sacrifice his life to stop the apostles' demands. It's not because the apostles are kind, but because the apostles cannot ask for things from the dead. 80% of the resources in the northern continent are in the hands of the apostles, in the hands of the alchemists and the knights. In the southern continent, it is conservatively estimated that 98% of the resources are in the hands of the church and the evil gods. This is wrong and bad. When I was in Fabro City, I discussed this issue with 2 of my students. I think these are wrong behaviors. The apostles should not ask for things like this and be so greedy. Therefore, I once established a young organization, the Scavengers. This organization now only has me and my 2 wizard apprentices. I hope that there will not be so many evil apostles who only know how to ask for things in this world, or even too many apostles. Let ordinary people take a breath, let ordinary people struggle for 1 silver shield, instead of being crushed into minced meat as a sacrifice one day, or being used as food to fill the stomach of a werewolf. The furnace and the Green Skull pirates have become a thing of the past, and the Volcano Shipping Company has also become a thing of the past. If you agree with the idea of the Scavengers, and agree that there should be no evil apostles in this world, and there is no need for so many apostles, then you can join the Scavengers. Of course, I will never force you. If you want to leave, I will bless you. It is dangerous to fight against evil gods, and it is also dangerous to fight against werewolves. It is very likely to die. I will not impose my ideals on you and let you die because of me. If you want to leave, I will let Mackenzie give you a generous severance pay, and then you can go back to your hometown, or go wherever you want. Rudolph fell silent, and he struggled to say. Yesterday, I was still criticizing the high-level officials of Belfour who sent their families away at the station. People are selfish. If you choose to leave, don't stay in the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. The Alchemy Council wants to abandon the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. This news is confidential and ordinary people don't know. There are dangers everywhere here. Leave the Eagle's Beak Peninsula as soon as possible. Rudolph waved his hand and took out a lot of cash from the stern space of the Starlight South ship. I will give you the gold shield of the United States of Kanta. The United States of Kanta looks very safe now. If you want to find a place to settle down, it is a good choice. You have been promoted many times, all of them are level 5 or 4 apostles. If you are careful, long distance travel is not a problem. The crew looked at each other in bewilderment. They used to think that Captains Furnace and Green Skull were kind and refused to rob others. Unexpectedly, Captain Furnace had such an ideal. It sounds childish and a little ridiculous, but thinking about Captain Furnace's behavior all along, he seems to be really fighting against the evil god cult and werewolves. These 2 apostles are regarded as typical evil apostles by Captain Furnace. The crew discussed to their heart's content, and Rudolph did not urge them. In the end, the crew came forward one by one and received severance pay ranging from tens of thousands of gold shields from Mackenzie. This was a huge sum of money, enough for them to have a prosperous second half of their lives in the United States of Cantal. After receiving the money, they came to Rudolph one by one, and Rudolph gave them a hug, hoping that these seafarers could adapt to life away from the sea. In the end, Mackenzie stayed. Captain, I am very old and have enjoyed everything I should have enjoyed. I am very interested in the scavenger concept you mentioned. Pilot stayed. Captain, your philosophy is so cool. I think it's much more interesting than the Druids' worship of nature. I will also join the scavengers with Mackenzie. Drake stayed. How should I put it? I used to think that you restricted your pirate group from looting because you looked down on the money of merchant ships. Later, after roughly understanding the scale of your wealth, I thought my judgment was right. Now it seems that you are actually a pirate with ideals. The era of the sea is over. I will also join the scavengers. Rudolph suddenly said, Drake, think about it, you can create an epidemic in the wolf tide and use the werewolf plague to get promoted. I can help you. Good. This is good. Zachary also stayed. He walked to Rudolph and said, Captain of the Furnace, I will also join the scavengers, and I am willing to continue to provide you with intelligence. Okay, but you will set up the intelligence network from the sea to the land next, which is equivalent to opening up a new field. I can't support you much, so I will give you 10 million gold shields. The boss is so generous that he actually allocated such a large sum of money for him to build an intelligence network. Those alchemists must beg to provide information to Zachary one by one. There are more than 50 people in the Volcano Trading Company, and finally 4 people stayed. Cooper walked up to Rudolph, you secretly established an organization, but you didn't even call me. I'm not even a veteran. Rudolph smiled and said, the organization of 3 people was originally just an academic discussion between me and 2 students. You come as the vice president, how about it? We have always been equal, why should I be the vice president? At least one of the 2 presidents. One step, you will be the president of the scavenger, and I will be the vice president. Okay, I reluctantly accepted it. Ivan took Rudolph's arm, I will join the scavenger too. Okay, the scavenger now has 9 people, but I don't know if my 2 unlucky students have been promoted, and why haven't they come back? Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 708. The council was very fast. 10 days later, Minister Duke delivered the level 7 druid relic. Mr. Furnace, this is the level 7 druid relic that we applied for you at the regional council. Rudolph looked at this special relic and said with a smile, this is not a relic applied for me, but a relic applied for you. I have become stronger, and ordinary people in Maha City have time to transfer. Use your relics to help you do things. Yes, this is to help ourselves, not to help you. Seeing Furnace staring at the relic in a trance, Duke felt a little uncomfortable. This level 7 relic is made of the druid's arm nervous system, which is closer to an organ specimen. In a short crystal column, the druid's arm nervous system was sealed by some unknown method. The red nerve bundle flashed with lightning in the crystal, just like the dense thunder in the thunderstorm. This druid relic is called level 7 lightning pulse. Then, Duke took out another box, which contained 2 relics, one of which was a level 7 Oblivion Priest relic and the other was a level 7 White Demon Priest relic. Mr. Furnace, we have brought you all the priest relics in stock, hoping to provide you with more help. Very good, I am just short of a level 7 White Demon Priest relic, otherwise I will waste an alchemist relic. You know, it is not easy to get alchemist relics now, we are too familiar with them, and we are embarrassed to start. Duke smiled awkwardly, thank you for your embarrassment. I will not waste time, I will go to accommodate the new North Sky constellation secret, and I will definitely come back before the defense of Maha City. The secret location of the Sajida is located in the Vulture Mountains, which is now the dividing line between East and West Elba. After briefly instructing Cooper, Rudolph left Belfour City. Before Rudolph came back, Cooper and Yvonne could not be soft-hearted and agreed to Duke's instigation to go to Maha City in advance. Only by following Rudolph could they go to Maha City. Before heading to the Vulture Mountains, Rudolph planned to stop by the port of Kotor to meet the Marquis of Golden Anchor and ask what the attitude of the royal family was. After the Constitutional Navy transferred half of its forces to the inland river Garonne, the intensity of the naval battle between Oyster Bay Port and Kotor Port decreased a lot. The Constitutional Navy of Oyster Bay Port was unable to launch a large-scale attack, and the Royal Navy of Kotor Port did not beat the fallen dog, but quietly accumulated strength. When the Starlight South ship brought Rudolph to the port of Kotor, Rudolph saw a lot of civilian merchant ships. The Royal Navy had a good life, and even merchant ships could enter the port of Kotor in large quantities. Rudolph did not want others to know that he came to see the Marquis of Golden Anchor, which was not good for the Marquis of Golden Anchor. There was a knock on the door outside the Marquis' study late at night. Hearing the knock on the door, the Marquis of Golden Anchor, Palu, looked up in surprise. If an officer wanted to see him, he would notify the attendant, who was specially trained to knock on the door and could not be so casual. In the port of Kotori, no one could knock on his door so casually. "Come in." The butler who had been serving the Marquis of Palu had prepared an emergency plan, ready to let the Marquis's guards hiding behind the wall break through the wall at any time to provide the Marquis with extreme strength. When the Marquis of Palu saw the visitor, he immediately signaled the butler not to act rashly, and then said to the butler, "Leave first, leave with your head down." The butler lowered his head obediently, stared at his feet, and walked out of the study silently. He didn't know who the Marquis wanted to see, and he, as a butler, couldn't know. If it was the previous butler Wendler, he would definitely not be driven out like him. Rudolph entered the Marquis's study and sat on the sofa. "Mr. Marquis, your furnishings are still exactly the same, no changes." "These furnitures don't need to be changed." Marquis Palu looked at Rudolph and said, "You have changed a lot, Rudolph. The intelligence said that you have been promoted to a level 7 wizard." "Yes, I have been promoted to a level 7 wizard." Hearing the affirmative answer, Count Palu felt a little unreal. When this young man first came to Port Kotori, he was still a level 4 wizard. In more than 2 years, he has become a level 7 wizard, and his promotion speed is very exaggerated. "Count Palu, I think you must know that the wolf tide is raging on the border of West Elba, and half of the provinces in the Garon region have been reduced to ruins and dead places." "Yes, I know." Count Palu lowered his eyes, and he had guessed what Rudolph was going to do. "Count Palu, I think you must know that the evil god cult has landed on the Eagle's Beak Peninsula and built the first temple on the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, the Temple of the Oblivion Church." "Yes, I know. What I really want to ask is, what is the attitude of the royal family and nobles of East Elba on the two issues of the wolf tide and the evil god cult?" Count Palu stared out the window for a long time, and what he was going to say next made him embarrassed. After sighing, Count Palu said, "Rudolph, the court of East Elba is now divided into 3 factions, and these 3 factions have been arguing. The first faction is the old-school nobles headed by Stuart Cavendish, Duke of Unicorn, and I am also included in this faction. Our attitude is that we should take advantage of the successive disasters in West Elba to extend a helping hand, win the hearts of the people of West Elba, and thus regain the right to rule West Elba. At the beginning of the Civil War, we were considered hardliners, and we were the first batch of nobles to respond to His Majesty the King's call and join the battlefield, because we believed that the honor of the nobles must not be tarnished, and we could no longer allow the alchemists to take advantage of them. However, since the appearance of the wolf tide, we have all become moderates, because we believe that the pride of the nobility does not allow us to take advantage of others' danger, and does not allow us to add insult to injury. Not only should we not take the opportunity to attack West Elba, we should also assist West Elba." Our attitude was ridiculed by the second faction of nobles. The hardliners headed by Duke Arsinoe of the Ram believed that alchemists must agree to the nobles' requests, the parliament must be dissolved, and all alchemists including the Speaker of the Provincial Council and above must be executed. Hardliners believe that the alchemists of West Elba are simply incapable of leading the Elba people to fight against the wolf tide and the cult of evil god. Only knights can gather the power of the majority of people and complete the integration of power. This is a good time for the noble knights to launch a large-scale attack to seize land, seize the population, and expand the power of the nobles. For this reason, Duke Arsinoe applied to His Majesty the King to go to the front line. The King approved his application. Now Duke Arsinoe is preparing for a large-scale attack under the Vulture Mountains. The third faction among the nobles, and the most important royal family, has a worrying attitude towards Si Elba. Rudolf looked at Count Palu. Carloman XVI's attitude was the key to the civil war. Count Palu said painfully. Even if we follow the hardliners' approach and directly send troops to capture all the land in West Elba, and then lead the knights to fight against the Wolf Tide and the evil cult, the Unicorn Duke and I are both willing. This is the next best thing. As a result, the problem now is that His Majesty's attitude is becoming more and more clear, and he is ready to add fuel to the fire. His Majesty sent the Duke of Arsinoe's Knights of the Ram to the front, making it clear that he would not spare Si Elba. He did not allow several knights on the front line to attack and occupy the land in a large scale. The front line received orders to contain as many constitutional forces as possible and constantly harassed and put pressure on the constitutional forces. Could it be that the appearance of the authority of destruction in the city of Lajur, the capital of West Elba, means that West Elba must be completely destroyed before the authority of destruction appears? We don't know about immortality, but Duke Unicorn and I are very entangled. We can't do anything now. Without His Majesty the King's order and without His Majesty the King's logistical support, we can only stay in the camp and wait for the situation to arise. Change. The royal family put forward harsh peace conditions and was not trying to negotiate peace. Those conditions are to prevent the alchemists from expecting assistance from the East Elba people. High-level alchemists will not go to the Holy Grail city themselves to be tortured, and councils at all levels will not be dissolved. Rudolf sighed. It was still caused by the authority of destruction. However, no one in the palace received detailed information about the Wolf Tide. Too many people died. This is because Corvinus did not leave the ancestral mountain. The Wolf Tide was a test sexual attack. If Corvinus leaves Zushan, if the evil god leaves the southern continent, then everything will be too late. 11 Elba will die, more people, countless people will die. Rudolf's voice became lower as he spoke. This matter was not something that Marquis Palu could solve. The Marquis's opinion could not change the attitude of the royal family, and even the attitudes of the dukes could not change this bad situation. Marquis Palu, I happen to be going to the Vulture Mountains. I will go and warn the warlike Duke Arsinoe of the Ram to make him calm down. It took Rudolf 5 days to fly to the Vulture Mountains. The Vulture Mountains used to have a large population, and many people relied on forestry and animal husbandry for their livelihood, but now it is sparsely populated. The war between West Elba and East Elba that lasted for more than 3 years has completely destroyed production and life here. Countless forest farms were abandoned, and people migrated to live in the plains under the mountains. As night fell, Rudolf quickly found the direct area of Sagittarius. The soil and rocks here are red, rich in iron ore, and the vegetation is sparse. It is a rare open-pit iron mine in the Caucasus Mountains. There is a constitutional army airship fleet stationed on Vulture Mountain. Several airships are taking off and landing in the camp, patrolling the surrounding area and protecting the iron mines not far away. There are many vultures living on Bald Mountain, and the existence of the airship base squeezes the vultures' living space. Some bored soldiers like to practice shooting on airships and shoot at the flying birds, causing the number of surrounding flying birds to plummet. Rudolf quietly passed through the fleet's camp and headed for the top of the mountain. After reaching the top of the mountain, we began to wait for midnight to come. Not long after, a group of cavalry suddenly rushed out from the woods at the foot of the mountain. The main flag of the cavalry is a ram flag. There is a black ram's head on a red background, and the sharp horns are all black. This is the ram knights mentioned by Marquis Palu who just entered the battlefield. Just when Rudolf was thinking about whether to help, he realized that this group of cavalry was not very strong. After seeing more than 10 airships flying into the sky, he quickly withdrew. It seems that this is just a reconnaissance team, not the main force of the Ram Knights. Fortunately, the provincial Rudolph took action. The time came to midnight, and the stars twinkled under the barrier of the air. Only when looking at these stars, Rudolph's mood will be calm. These stars, which were similar to those in his previous life, brought comfort to Rudolph's soul. How he wished that this was just a parallel world. I hope he didn't die in his previous life and was still living a step-by-step life. I hope that he is just a passerby in this life, a wanderer far away from his hometown, a wanderer who cannot return to his hometown. The stars in the two worlds are the same, which can be regarded as sharing the beauty of the moon from 1,000 miles away. Those memories are so old, and I have lived here for more than 6 years without realizing it. Rudolph lay on the ground, staring at the starry sky with lifeless eyes, emptying his mind and thinking of nothing. I don't know when, I don't know which wind woke Rudolph up. He stood up from the ground and prepared to complete the secret ritual. Starstone powder flew out from Rudolph's fingertips, and 30 centimeters above the ground, outlined the pattern of the Sky Arrow hexagram. There are only 4 stars in the Sky Arrow constellation, 2 stars represent the tail feathers, 1 star represents the arrow shaft, and 1 star represents the arrow. It is a constellation with a very small star field area. The direct shooting area of Titan Arrow is also very small. If you want to complete the secret ritual, you can't leave the nearby mountains. After placing all 3 relics on the astrological hexagram, Rudolph began to guide the apostle power in the relics to dissipate. The main relic, the 7th level lightning pulse, the secondary relic, the 7th level insect nest, and the secondary relic, the 7th level white magic light bead, the apostle power of the 3 relics slowly dissipated to the surroundings, mixed with the starstone powder, and wandered along the lines of the starstone powder. Finally, the 3 apostle powers were mixed together to form a new special energy body. Under a certain aggregation reaction of the 3 apostle powers, the 4 stars of the Sagitta suddenly shone in the starry sky. The 4 stars of the Sagitta became the brightest stars nearby. Not only the airship base on the mountainside saw them, but also the Constitution Army Command and the Knights Command, which were far away, saw the 4 shining stars. In the Knights Command, Ducasino stood in the open space, staring at the direction of the Sagitta. What happened there? Soon, a staff officer came behind Ducasino. My lord. That is the star field of the Sagitta in the north sky. Someone is being promoted to the Sagitta wizard. There are several constellations in one wizard level, and this kind of wizard is a minority. Most wizards will not risk accommodating a second constellation after accommodating the characteristics of one constellation. Hunting for relics is very risky, and many wizards die from their own greed. Other apostles see wizards accommodating constellation characteristics, and generally believe that the wizard is being promoted. Promotion? Promotion to level 7 wizard, Ducasino said after a pause. Go and ask Duke Steward. Ask him to come to my headquarters to discuss the unexpected appearance of the level 7 wizard. The wizard who is being promoted is not a knight. If the alchemist has an extra level 7 wizard to help, it will be troublesome. A marquis asked, Duke, do you think it is possible that it is the furnace? According to the intelligence briefing, the furnace has a good relationship with the alchemist of Zirba. Ducasino was not sure. It shouldn't be. Hasn't the furnace been active in the Eagle's Beak Peninsula? Why did it come to the Vulture Mountains? Isn't the evil god cult enough for him to be busy? Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 709. Star power surged on the top of the mountain. In the Constitutional Army barracks, the wizard witch hunter kept wiping cold sweat. As a level 5 wizard, the changes in star power on the top of the mountain had the greatest impact on him. He had already told the officers about the changes in star power. I don't know what decision the officers will make. Several military officers gathered together to put the camp on alert while discussing whether to send an airship to the mountains to take a look. Let's go and take a look. We should be prepared in case of an accident. The front is very fragile. If we lose our stronghold, the entire front may have to retreat for more than 10 kilometers. Has the messenger airship set off? Please report it to the command center as soon as possible. I hope the support from the command center will come soon. While several officers were still discussing, they suddenly heard a voice behind them. Don't mess around, don't be nervous, stay on your own. Several officers suddenly turned their heads and saw a vampire standing against the wall behind them. Pale skin, scarlet pupils, and a fang on each side of the thin lips. He folded his hands on his chest and leaned against the wall casually, as if he had always been here. I don't know how this vampire appeared here. All the camp's defense systems were disabled and the intruder was not detected at all. What they can't see is that there is a completely transparent star chameleon next to Vanya. The scorpion tiger chameleon completely envelopes Vanya, making Vanya's infiltration very easy. It is very simple for Rudolph to enter absolute hiding. He can just use the star power of Lacerda. If the chameleon wants to help Vanya hide, he needs to swallow Vanya. Vanya walked towards several officers in the shock of the officers and placed a document on the sand table in front of the officers. The division commander was not panicked. He had already become numb after staying on the battlefield for a long time. He looked at the contents of the document and said quickly, "It turns out that Mr. Furnace is completing the constellation secret formula. We will keep our distance and will not disturb Mr. Furnace." The officers behind the division commander quickly breathed a sigh of relief. If it was a Furnace, it would be fine. The Furnace is now an ally of West Elba. The Furnace cooperates very well with the Constitutional Army in the Luberon region and has a very dazzling record in the Garon region. They will only be happy when they come to the Vulture Mountains. A scout suddenly entered the headquarters. Division commander. The Ram Knights are out. They are approaching us. This airship mobile division has a level 8 alchemy bullet, which is the key to deterring the level 7 Knights of East Elba. However, the division commander did not ask the sniper to prepare immediately, but looked at Vanya. Vanya said, "Well, it just so happens that the Furnace wants to talk to the nobles about something. After he completes the secret formula, he will go to see the Duke of Arsinoe." On the top of the mountain, Rudolph had completed all the preparations and was just waiting for the Sagittarius star power to land. North Sky Sagittarius secret formula. Astrology chart, Sky Arrow hexagram. Main relic, level 7 Druid relic or level 7 Wind Wizard relic. Sub-relics, level 7 Insect High Priest relics, level 7 White Demon Priest relics or level 7 Alchemist relics. Ceremony location, Sagittarius direct area, Vulture Mountains. Rudolph stared at the star field of Sagittarius. Among the 4 bright stars of Sagittarius, the bright star representing the arrow suddenly shone. An arrow was reflected in his pupils, and the arrow turned into a thin blue meteor and shot towards Rudolph from the starry sky. The speed of this arrow was so fast that it almost instantly penetrated the distance between Sean Kong and Rudolph. The sky arrow hit Rudolph directly between the eyebrows. He also felt the feeling of being hit between the eyebrows, and the back of his neck shrank. This was a natural physiological reaction when facing a fatal threat. After the Sagittarius star power entered Rudolph's body, it still maintained cohesion. It started from the center of Rudolph's eyebrows and turned several times. After constantly hitting walls in the body, it finally shot towards Rudolph's fingertips. A sky arrow was shot from the fingertips of his left hand, and the arrow hit the main relic, a level 7 Druid lightning strike vein. The lightning veins sealed in the short crystal pillar were instantly penetrated, and the power of the Druid inside exploded, automatically flowing towards Rudolph. The natural disaster mastered by level 7 Druids is lightning strikes. When foreign enemies enter the Druids' territory, the enraged druid will create thunderclouds covering the entire forest. The thunderclouds will roll, lightning and thunder will occur. The non-stop and extremely destructive lightning strikes will continuously attack the enemies who break into the druid tribe, allowing the enemies to feel the power of lightning strikes. After the level 7 druid power entered Rudolph's body, Rudolph felt as if he was being shocked by electricity. The powerful current quickly penetrated Rudolph's body, and a tingling sensation traveled through Rudolph's nervous system. If he and Ivan hadn't played some mini games involving electric shock orgasms, just the power of a level 7 druid would have made Rudolph instantly lose the ability to react. Thanks to Ivan, Rudolph's body had sufficient electric shock resistance. His nervous system glows like lightning in a thunderstorm, giving him faster reaction capabilities and allowing him to master the most important characteristic of lightning strikes, the ultimate explosive power. The second small arrow made of sky arrow star power was shot from Rudolph's fingertips. This time it hit the level 7 insect nest of the deputy relic. The level 7 insect nest power exploded and rushed towards Rudolph. The sky arrows that entered from above the head suddenly had the ability to reproduce like an insect nest. 1 arrow became 2, 2 became 4, and 4 became 8, rapidly dividing and multiplying. Arrows were traveling through Rudolph's nervous system these days, almost filling Rudolph's nervous system, making his nervous system tough and full of sharpness. Until the end, Rudolph's nervous system was filled with tiny sky arrows. The third sky arrow shot out from Rudolph's fingertips and hit the last secondary relic, the 7th level white magic light bead. When the power of the white magic faith entered Rudolph's body, the speed of the sky arrows in his body suddenly increased, so fast that Rudolph could not feel it at all. The attack method of the white magic priest is various light beams, and the speed of light is the speed limit, so the speed of the sky arrows has also reached the limit. The apostle power of the 3 relics played a role in turn, strengthening the original sky arrow starlight arrows in turn. After the 3 apostle powers were completely integrated with Rudolph, Rudolph completed the secret formula of the sky arrow. He raised his hand, and a sky arrow was suspended on the tip of the index finger of his left hand. This arrow is not in the shape of blue starlight, but a white arrow wrapped with lightning. The white light comes from the relic of the white magic priest, representing extreme speed. The lightning comes from the druid relic, representing destructive power. With a little input of sky arrow star power, the arrow quickly split into several arrows. This endless splitting ability comes from the hive relic, which represents powerful fire suppression. In terms of single-point destructive ability, the Sky Arrow Wizard is second only to Hercules among the 7th level wizards, and is the second most destructive constellation. After completing the promotion, Rudolph looked into the distance. At the foot of the mountain, a special cavalry was rushing here. Rudolph saw the black ram flag, and the Duke of Asino of East Elba came in person. "It's just right, I have something to talk to you about. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 710. Duke Asino's weapon is a battle axe, the blade of which is particularly wide, like the horns of an argali, with a graceful arc. The elite of the Ram Knights are heading towards the mountain where the star power is changing. Duke Asino stares at the top of the mountain. According to intelligence, there are level 8 alchemical bullets in the airship base on the hillside of the mountain. Could it be that the wizards of the Constitutional Army are being promoted? If a level 7 wizard appears on the battlefield, there is a high probability of variables. Before the general attack, this variable must be eliminated, so Asino will personally deal with the wizard on the top of the mountain tonight. The extreme power is sent to the warhorse under him. Under the stimulation of the extreme power, the warhorse exerts a strong mobility, comes and goes freely on the mountain, and quickly runs to the top of the mountain. What surprised Du Casino was that he found that there was no airship taking off from the airship base. His Ram Knights are a big target, and the Constitutional Army cannot ignore such a powerful cavalry. Led by the 7th level Knight Du Casino and his 3 vassal marquises, this cavalry has only 500 riders, but it can exert strong combat power. Rudolph stared at the cavalry in the distance, raised his palm, and a 10-centimeter long sky arrow appeared in his palm. The height of the sky arrow slowly increased, and the length slowly increased. When the arrow floated to the height of his shoulder, it was already half a meter long. Thunder resounded through the valley, and an arrow shot out, crossing the black night sky, with a tail light like lightning, and hit the 7th level Knight Asino very accurately. The distance between the two sides was so far, and the arrow was so sudden. If Du Casino had not carefully used the guard chain to connect the 3 marquises behind him, this arrow would have pierced his chest. Even so, the arrow also penetrated his armor and pierced a little of his flesh. Du Casino only then realized that if he did not respond with all his strength, he would die under the arrow. For a moment, the guard locks in the cavalry team lit up one after another, and the knights changed from marching mode to attack mode early. They were still 2 kilometers away from the mountain, so they had to go all out. Rudolph looked at the sky arrows floating in front of him and was very satisfied with the power of the sky arrows. After all, he was a level 7 knight, and such killing power was enough to change the situation of the battle. The sky arrows had the characteristics of a worm nest. He first condensed a full bow arrow, which would not be shot out and would remain in a state of being ready to fire. Then, arrows were shot out from the full bow arrows, and the full bow arrows could keep firing sky arrows. The first sky arrow was a greeting, and then the second, third, and fourth arrows were shot at the Ram Knights, one after another, and the interval between the 2 arrows became smaller and smaller, and the continuous arrows were almost connected into a line, constantly shooting at the Duke of Asino. From the perspective of Duke Asino, an unknown light spot appeared on the top of the mountain. The light spot shot the first arrow and successfully attacked him, piercing his armor. Then, the second arrow came, and the speed of the arrow was so fast that even if it was 1 kilometer away, it made his hair stand on end. When did such a powerful wizard appear in the Constitution Army? He held up the shield, which was filled with tremendous extreme power. When he tried his best to deal with it, the attack of this level 7 wizard was finally blocked by him. The arrow was wrapped with lightning, with terrible kinetic energy, and hit the shield. Du Casino felt his arm sink. If one arrow was nothing, then the continuous arrows that followed actually suppressed Du Casino. The arrows were so dense that he could not make any other counter-attacks except rushing forward with the shield. The attack of a level 7 wizard actually forced Asino to defend with all his strength. He was worthy of being a wizard of the Sky Arrow, and the legendary wizard with the top 2 attack capabilities among the wizards of the North Sky. The battle axe was raised and lowered. Duke Arsino had no chance to throw it and could only defend with all his strength. The mountains were filled with continuous thunder sounds. The officers of the Constitutional Army stood on the observation deck excitedly, watching the battle between Furness and Duke Arsino. Division Commander, should we arrange snipers to kill Asino with level 8 alchemical bullets? The division commander shook his head. Can you use level 8 bullets to kill Furness? Furness is the best user of level 8 alchemical bullets. He is the Southern Cross assassin. Wait quietly, wait for Mr. Furness and Asino to decide the winner. The scorpion tiger chameleon crawled quickly under the mountain. Vanya hid in the scorpion tiger chameleon and crawled silently towards the elite of the Ram Knights. Rudolph raised his other hand and made another full bow arrow. This full bow arrow, like the first arrow, shot dense and connected arrows in a line, but the target of the second full bow arrow was the knight behind Duke Arsino. As long as the knights behind Duke Asino are eliminated in a short time, Duke Asino himself will not be able to make any waves. The target of the second full bow arrow is no longer fixed, but like a beam of radioactive light, It covers all the knights behind Asino and attacks the knights behind Asino indiscriminately. Asino can withstand the level 7 sky arrows, and the 3 marquises are only level 6 knights. With the help of their extreme strength, they can exert the strength of level 7 apostles, but the sky arrows are so dense that each of them will receive several per second. As for the knights of lower levels behind the marquis, how can they resist the level 7 sky arrows? Asino knew that this would not work. The Ram Knights, who he was so proud of, might be defeated here inexplicably. The action tonight was a bit hasty. He only brought a small number of Ram Knights, which was far from the true strength of the Ram Knights. At this moment, Asino reached the limit of the extraction behind him. He suddenly raised the battle axe, and the extreme power gathered on the battle axe, and the battle axe was thrown out fiercely. The speed of the battle axe was so fast that it whistled and hit the top of the mountain in an instant, and also hit the unidentified wizard. Rudolph frowned slightly, and before the battle axe arrived, his figure disappeared and entered an absolute hidden state. The huge extreme power on the battle axe exploded, and even a terrible energy ball appeared on the top of the mountain. The white energy ball was filled with extreme power, which instantly flattened the top of the mountain, and the peak was cut off by more than 10 meters. The peak was filled with dust, and Asino stared at the top of the mountain, not knowing what the result was. The arrows disappeared, and the wizard must have turned into ashes in the attack equivalent to that of an 8th level apostle. Just as Duke Asino was gradually relaxing, he suddenly felt a chill. A 7th level castle bat flew silently behind his head. Asino turned around quickly and smashed the castle bat with the side edge of his shield, turning the castle bat into a bloody mist. I was just paying attention to the wizard on the top of the mountain, but I don't know when there were more than a dozen castle bats around. Asino waved his shield and quickly killed all the castle bats. After the castle bats died, they turned into bloody mist and surrounded Asino. Level 7 Vampire. Who is it? Asino didn't see the castle bat, but in a blink of an eye, he saw a young wizard suddenly appear in front of him. Blood mist flashed. His head was pointed at by a gun. When he saw the wizard's appearance, he already knew who the wizard on the top of the mountain was. Furnace. Why did the furnace appear here? Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 711. There is a long and thin peephole on the helmet of Duke Asino, and even a finger cannot be inserted into the peephole. This is the tradition of knights. The iron helmet protects the knight's head very well. The helmet is filled with the knight's extreme power and can provide perfect protection. Now, a gun barrel is pressed against the peephole. At this moment, Asino's pupils shrank to the smallest. When did the enemy approach him? Why did he not feel anything? He knew that there was a lot of blood mist around him, and he also expected that there were level 7 vampires around him. Level 7 vampires could suddenly appear beside him with the blood mist. What he didn't expect was that the one who appeared in front of him was the furnace. He had seen the intelligence of the furnace. This was an extremely dangerous wizard. Since the royal family wanted the furnace, the relationship between the furnace and the alchemist was very good, and even became the alchemist's #1 thug. Asino understood that being pressed by the barrel was like being pressed by a level 8 alchemical bullet. Rudolph fired without hesitation, and the level 8 alchemical bullet in the cylinder shot into the peephole. This Ram Duke Arsino was a war advocate among the nobles, and at this moment Rudolph was ready to kill him. If he could kill this war advocate noble, it would be a good thing for Sierba, and it would allow Sierba to breathe a sigh of relief. Shooting at such a close distance, this bullet almost achieved the effect of absolute hit. The bullet exploded in the peephole, bursting out huge energy. Arsino's adrenaline surged, and all the apostle's power gathered in his head, not even in the helmet, but instinctively gathered in the skin and muscles of the head, ready to use the knight's powerful body to force this level 8 alchemical bullet. Behind him, all the knights' abdomens tightened, their lords were threatened with life, and the extraction of extreme power reached the maximum. A moment later, a super-strong energy ball with a radius of 1 meter appeared above Arsinoe's head. It was a scorching energy ball formed by the 8th level alchemical power, which instantly wrapped Arsinoe's upper body. Seeing Duke Arsinoe being swallowed by the fireball, the Duke's vassals panicked. Even a 7th level knight would be seriously injured if directly hit by an 8th level alchemical bullet. What surprised Rudolph was that in the scorching orange-yellow light of the 8th level alchemical bullet, there was always a touch of white light, which was the white light of the knight's extreme power. The light ball filled with the alchemist's burning energy disappeared, and Arsinoe's figure appeared again. His left half of the face was covered with large red scars from the burns, and the left eye that was directly hit was burned with a pit, and his eyeball was vaporized in the attack of the 8th level alchemical bullet. Even with the knight's powerful body, he could not avoid being seriously injured by this 8th level alchemical bullet. What shocked Rudolph was that the Marquis of Arsinoe's momentum did not decrease but increased. Arsinoe, who was seriously injured, became stronger. The more extreme power he absorbed from his body, the more extreme power he could hold. Rudolph frowned. He came to attack the knight nobles, not to help Arsinoe get promoted. The knights were even more surprised that the Duke was completely suppressed in the battle with a level 7 wizard, and there were signs of a breakthrough due to the huge pressure. This phenomenon should only occur when a level 7 knight faces a powerful level 8 apostle. When will a level 7 wizard also put a level 7 knight in a desperate situation and have to use promotion to fight? Rudolph has prepared the Taurus forbidden technique pulverized world, and the strongest means of shooting finger fire, and must interrupt Arsinoe's promotion. If a level 8 knight is given to Dong Elba, it will be a big joke. The Duke of Arsinoe must be killed. This knight is very talented and has found an opportunity for promotion. At this moment, Rudolph suddenly turned his head, and a knight's spear whizzed over. The conical knight's spear was more than 4 meters long, rotating in the air to maintain stability, and went straight to Rudolph's heart. The speed of this knight's spear was so fast that if Rudolph did not dodge, he would definitely be pierced by this knight's spear. Absolute concealment must appear when attacking, which is the disadvantage of absolute concealment. This disadvantage has never been used before, because Rudolph appeared very suddenly and others had no reaction time. The knight's spear perfectly captured the moment when Rudolph appeared. If Rudolph wanted to continue to attack Asino with 2 forbidden techniques, he would inevitably be hit by this knight's spear. At the critical moment, Rudolph gave up all attacks and entered absolute concealment. The knight's spear passed through the air in front of Asino and slammed into the ground fiercely. The surrounding ground shook violently, and spider-web-like cracks appeared on the ground. The powerful crushing force even caused cutting lines in the air. The huge airflow blew Arsinoe backwards. This shot not only stopped Rudolph, but also interrupted Arsinoe's momentum of promotion. When Rudolph appeared again, he was standing on a boulder that was no longer rolling. A cavalry team appeared in the distance, and the flag of this cavalry team was a white unicorn. This was also one of the reasons why Rudolph finally stopped. The person who came was the Duke of Unicorn. Because of the Marquis of Palu, Rudolph still had to respect the Duke of Unicorn. The Duke of Unicorn and the Marquis of Golden Anchor were important allies, and they advanced and retreated together. Arsinoe, who had just been on the trend of promotion and had just fallen into madness, was uncomfortable at this moment, not only because he was blown to the back by the residual power of the Duke of Unicorn's knight's gun, but also because someone appeared and interrupted his promotion. Stuart Cavendish. What are you doing? In a hurry, Arsinoe called out the name of the Duke of Unicorn. There are also high and low ranks among the dukes. The Duke of Unicorn is the well-deserved first noble of the East Elba royal family, with the largest fiefdom and the most knights. Arsinoe's anger reached its peak. No matter what, he would be furious if the promotion of any knight was interrupted. Rudolph looked at the Duke of Unicorn. It turned out that the name of the contemporary Duke of Unicorn was Stuart. After Duke Stewart took control of the situation, he asked his warhorse to come to the battlefield in a trot. "Arsenault, calm down. You will not be promoted just now, but will only die." Duke Stewart did not look at Arsenault at all, but looked at the furnace on the boulder. The furnace has a record of killing level 8 werewolves and level 8 priests several times. You can't fight him. Without the help of the evil god, even the level 8 priest would die in his hands. Hearing the words of the Unicorn Duke, Asino's remaining one eye slowly regained its calm. The knight likes to fight evenly for a long time, and the furnace will not give him this opportunity. In the past, the furnace's attacks were sudden sneak attacks, ending the battle in an instant. Maybe what the Unicorn Duke said is right, he will die and there will be no chance of promotion. Rudolph stopped messing around. He has little chance of winning in front of the two dukes.